So what happens when you've made some fancy looking applique like that Hawaiian up there, and now you need to stitch around the edge? Well, the easiest stitch that you can probably use is a blanket stitch, and I'm going to explain why in this video and show you how to use it. And that's whether you've got one of the fancy quilting blanket stitches or one of the more normal standard blanket stitches. Yes, they are different. And have you discovered it on your machine yet? But first of all, we need some of this. So let me explain what that is in the next section. But first, who am I? I am Kim. This is Quilt with Kim. You, my lovely, are very, very welcome. Let's go check this baby out. So this lovely stuff is called stabilizer, and you can get it by the half meter, or you can get big rolls of it. To be honest, go and get a big roll of it and keep it in your sewing room somewhere. It is a marvelous stuff to have hanging around. You will love it when you start using it. What do we use it for? We use it when we're doing, any decorative stitches or even things like buttonholes, where you need to literally stabilize the fabric underneath your machine. So when you're doing the fancy stitches, or whether you're doing the buttonholes, for instance, your machine is doing quite a lot of work in a close area, and it needs to move your fabric over the feed dogs, and it can only do that when it's got something to grip onto. So what this stabilizer does is help your machine to grip onto your fabric so you can do the decorative stitching that you want to do. Now, there are two types really. This is a stitch and tear, so we pin it onto the back of our fabric. I'll show you that in just a second. You can also get an iron-on one, which, to be honest, I haven't used, but it's got a low tack on it that you can just iron on the back of your fabric and it will stay in place whilst you're doing your stitching. Have I seen a need for it? Not really, if I'm being completely honest with you, but if you want the iron on and you know that you love it, then absolutely go for it. Experiment, see what works best for you. How we use it then is we cut a piece of stabilizer that is a bit bigger than the applique that we want to do. So this is Hawaiian applique, and we're going to put that on the back. It does not have to be an exact size. If you've got a big scrap that goes behind your applique, that is fine too, but I've cut a square that is just a bit bigger than this block that I've made here. As long as it is bigger than your applique piece, then you are good to go. What I'm going to do here is pin this in place, and we're really just pinning it in place so it doesn't move around. That's all. You don't need to pin it to within an inch of its life. I seem to have the world's longest pins. I think what happens, I have a very dear friend, Andrea, hello if you're watching, Andrea, who does upholstery and makes curtains and blinds, and she has massive long pins which are like that, very long pins, and I have the normal size pins which are sort of like that. And then quite often we end up with each other's pins. I have no idea how, but it happens. What I have done is just pinned in the four corners, it literally just to keep that in place. Once you get stitching, it's not going to move anywhere. So that's all you need to do to prepare your difficult applique. So this is Hawaiian applique, complete with some cat hairs on it. Shadow has been around, and I thought I'd protected it all week. So we've got this prepared, and now we need to get it underneath the machine. Let me switch over to the machine, and I'm going to talk about settings for a couple of moments. So before we move on to the machine settings, I want to show you which blanket stitch you are looking for, because it kind of depends on your machine which one you might have. Let me open the lid of my machine and put my glasses on so I can see, and then move my camera up, and let's just get this focused. There we are, that's focused. Right, I can't get any closer because it goes all fuzzy. So depending on your machine, have a look for that one there. You've got little dots and a side swing blanket stitch, and the reason why you want to look for that is because it is easier to go around corners, and I'm going to show you that in my demonstration in a second. The other one that you may have, oh, by the way, the little Q that's down there that stands for quilting is for applique and basically going around corners and stuff like that. And then the other one is this one, which you tend to find on most machines. So this one here is your normal blanket stitch. Some machines, it has it going the other way, which is fine. You can use that. You just have to go the other way round. You have a solid line with your left swing. It looks like a little comb and the teeth go out to the left, but it is a solid line. Yes, you can absolutely use that one. I'm going to show you that second, but we're going to do this one first. So if you've got this one, this is the one that you want to go for. So the settings it comes up with, so I've put in my stitch 34, which is just the stitch number on my machine. Yours is likely to be different. And we can see it's got its standard settings come up. So here, the stitch width 1.5, that is the side swing, like the teeth on a comb. That's your side bit of your blanket stitch. I am going to show you what happens when we change these. And then the stitch length, the 1.8, is the distance between those little teeth, as it were. So if you look on here, the dashes, the teeth coming down, that's that bit there, which is your stitch width, and then the dashes in between is your 1.8, your stitch length. And as you increase that, the gap between those teeth increases, and then as you increase that, your little teeth increase. When we run that through the machine, and what I encourage you to do is do a few little test runs to see what it looks like on the standard version and then what happens when you change both. So I'm just going to do that really quickly now before we get on to the Hawaiian applique itself, because I want to show you and take you through the process of how we get to the size of blanket stitch that we want for our applique. I've got a scrap bit of fabric underneath my foot here, and I'm just going to run a stitch line just with those standard settings. I haven't changed anything, just to see what that turns out and looks like. I think it's good if you see the whole process. So just drop my needle and just go along a little bit. And I don't know if you can see that from here, probably not actually. We've got really tiny stitches. Just do another side swing. Okay, and let's take that out and show you. So you can see here, I've got really tiny stitches. So I've got tiny teeth and tiny stitches in between the teeth. And that isn't really going to look very good on the edge of our applique. So if I put this up here and show you, you can see the size of this. And then if we put a little bit of tiny applique, we're not going to see anything. So what we need to do is increase the size of both our teeth and the gap between our teeth. So what I suggest is change your teeth size first. Somebody's going to take a clip of this video and it's going to appear somewhere very strange saying change the size of your teeth. So I'm going to increase my stitch width. So let me just turn my camera back. It's a bit dodgy, this. I'm going to increase my stitch width, whoops, and I'm going to probably put that up to 3.5 mil, and we'll see the difference that makes. Let me put my camera back. All right, let's get going with a 3.5. And this is what I want you to do at home, is run that first stitch line and then run a couple of test lines to see what the difference is when you increase that stitch width and then the stitch length. Do one at a time so that you know what you're doing and what's changed. Can you see the difference between those two sets of teeth there? That's our 3.5 mil and that's our little itty bitty 1.5 mil. So I think that 3.5 mil is probably where I want to be. Now the next thing is I'm going to change my stitch length to alter this here. Now you absolutely could leave that exactly where it is, and what I want to explain actually whilst we're here is these little stitches, the mini stitches, the reason why they're so useful is because with each stitch, and I've got 4 stitches in between my teeth, with each of those stitches it allows you to pivot and turn around your corners. And if you've got tight corners, like on a Hawaiian applique or any other applique, and you've got really tight corners, then looking for these stitches where you've got the little dots as it shows on the pattern on your machine, but it makes these little stitches, which means you can make a stitch, stop your machine, pivot and turn round a corner. That's why you're looking for this stitch. So We can make them a little bit bigger if we want to, and I'm going to do that by increasing my stitch length. So let me just get over to show you over here again. So I'm going to just put that up to 2.5, and let's see what happens there. Okay, you can of course leave it exactly where it is if you wanted to do that. I think with a blanket stitch, really the impact is going to be with the teeth, but let's see what it looks like with our 2.5mm stitch length. Okay, so now we've got a longer gap in between our teeth. If you've got a longer gap in between your teeth. Okay, let's take that out and have a look. Oops, got the thread caught. So we can see here, let's get that where you can see it. Can you see here that the teeth length is the same? That's our 3.5. But now, because we've increased the size of the stitches in between those teeth, so we've gone from, what was it, 1.8 to 2.5. That's made quite a difference in the distance between those teeth there. So this becomes longer. So it then really depends on whether you've got really tight curves to get round, or you're just doing nice easy stretches of applique. If it's a nice easy stretch of applique, so like let's just say you're doing I was trying to think, maybe a ball, just a circular shape, you're appliquing a ball onto something and you've got a circular shape, then probably this one is fine. But if you've got something complicated like Hawaiian applique, or you're doing an elephant or a dog, or even a star or a heart, then probably I might stick to this 1.8mm stitch length in the middle of the teeth, because that means you can go into the tight corners much easier. So I'm going to put back to the 1.8, and then I'm going to show you what happens on the actual applique itself. And don't worry, I am going to show you on the standard blanket stitch too. I've got the applique underneath the machine then, and we're ready to go. Now, a couple of things. Number one, you'll notice I've got orange thread on here, and this is going to show up on the blue. The reason I've chosen this is purely so that you can see what I am doing. And that is the only reason. I probably wouldn't use an orange thread on this particular piece of applique, but who knows, creative choices is entirely your choice. Couple of things about thread colours. When you're starting out, you've got a bit of a choice, because if you chose a colour thread that is similar to your applique fabric, then it might be a little bit more difficult to see whilst you're doing the stitching. So make sure you've got some really good light. However, if you go a bit wonky to start with, then it won't show up so much. All right. If you've got a contrasting thread, which is really going to show up like this orange here, then it is far easier to see, yes, but if you make any mistakes when you're starting out, then they will be there for all to see. So it is entirely up to you. But what I suggest is get yourself some thread, a bright thread, get yourself a practice bit of applique, and practice first so you can get comfortable with it. If you're doing your first sampler quilt, then go for it, because I'd say, your first sampler quilt is there to show your progress as well. Yes, it's to practice all these different new blocks, but in a few years' time, you'll look back and go, look how far I have come. So it is a good snapshot of where you are on your quilting journey. Don't sweat the small stuff. As I was saying to my class last night, it is just fabric and thread. Nobody's going to die because you've gone a bit wonky on there. Just go with it and say it's a creative design choice. That always is my answer for the wonky bits. Anyway, it makes it unique. All right, so having spoken about thread, where we start then, we've got a continuous shape. It doesn't really matter where we start, if I'm being honest, but a little tip is to start where we've got a nice continuous length as much as you can, because you want to get into the rhythm of your stitching. And to do that, if you've got a length to go round, that makes your life easier. The second thing is, what you will have noticed when you're doing your practice bits is your stitch has a rhythm to it. And then it depends on whether we've got these little dot blanket stitches or whether you've got a standard blanket stitch. And I'll do the blanket stitch next. We're doing the quilting blanket stitch first. Now on that stitch, it does a number of stitches and then it does its side swing. My particular machine does 4 little stitches before it does the side swing. Your machine might be different. So what I want you to do is do a bit of a practice run on your test piece and count how many stitches there are in between the side swing and really notice what your machine does. This is really good for your brain. It's really good for your mental health because we're really concentrating on something. You cannot think about anything else whilst you're doing this. Just think of it as good for you, even if it gets a bit frustrating. So how do we start then? So first of all, I need to make sure that my thread is out of the way. I've got an open toe foot on and I'm going to put my presser foot down in position so my needle is going to fall just to the right of the edge of our applique. So I'm going to exaggerate. You don't want it this side, you want it on my yellow side, but you want the needle falling just on the edge of the applique here. And in order to do that, first up, when you get the edge of your applique, can you see is that the edge of the applique isn't sitting right in the middle of our presser foot, and that's fine. That's fairly normal actually. What I found is you probably want that edge sitting slightly to the right of that center section. So having established that, before we just drop our needle willy-nilly, we are going to get our hand wheel and we're going to slowly drop our needle so it hovers just above the fabric, and then we can see where our needle is going to fall. If I'm happy with where that is starting, I can then drop the needle. Do I need to do a lock stitch? No, not necessarily, because as we come all the way around, you can just stitch over the first bit and that'll lock it into place. But if you want to do a lock stitch, go for it. If you're on that quilting stitch, it'll lock stitch on the spot. But if you've got a standard blanket stitch, it will probably go back a little bit and come forwards again. All right, so again, practice on your scrap to find out what happens when you lock stitch or don't lock stitch. I don't tend to personally. I'll come round and go back over the start, which is probably the easiest thing. So to start with then, put your speed setting on your machine. If you've got speed setting on your machine, I'd put it to slow or medium, depending on how comfortable you are. And we're going to start by watching what our machine does. And this is why we want a nice bit of length to stitch up. So if I put my foot down, okay, that was 2 stitches and a side. 1, 2, 3, 4, side stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, side stitch. And I really want you to count that as your machine is doing it, because when we come around these corners, that knowledge will really help you. So we know it's done its side stitch. We're going to do 4, it's going to do 4 more little stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, side stitch. 1, 2. Now, can you see here, my applique is now, the edge has come off to the left. I can't carry on because that means I'll get a straight line here. So this is now, I've done 2 of those little stitches. I'm going to lift up my presser foot and I'm going to twizzle just a little bit because I want to do 1 stitch. You can see that we've got a tight curve coming around here, and I just want enough of the edge of my applique in front of my needle to do 1 stitch. And that's all I'm going to do is press my foot pedal, get all my foots and feet and pedals wrong, 1 stitch, so that I can then lift my presser foot and come round again and do 1 stitch. Now, before I go further, what's it going to do next? It's going to do our side stitch next, because we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's going to do a side stitch. Now, our side stitches need to be at a right angle to the edge of our applique. So what you want to do is then position your applique so the side stitch goes off at a little right angle. So I'm going to position that in place, and actually that'll set me up nicely for the next stitch as well. So even though this looks not straight on, it's not, but the little bit in front of me where I'm doing that applique is in the right position. So if I now do my side stitch, you can see it goes off to the side at a nice right angle, and then I can adjust it slightly and do my forward stitch. That's one forward stitch. And as we come around to here, I probably need to adjust a little bit to do another stitch. That's 2 stitches. Press a foot, adjust, pivot, drop, one more stitch, lift my presser foot, adjust, it's only a little tiny bit I'm adjusting, drop my presser foot, 1 stitch, and again we're now up to our side stitch. So I'm going to position my applique again, so when I do a side stitch it's going to go at that right angle. Let's do side stitch and then do a little micro adjustment, and this really is just little tiny micro adjustments. Okay, and another one, that's stitch 1, stitch 2, stitch 3. I'll do one more there, and then I'm going to get it into position so that when I do my side stitch it's at right angles. So if you've done blanket stitch before and your little side teeth are at strange angles, that's the reason why, is because you're not actually getting the edge of the applique at a right angle for your needle to make that side stitch. So let's just do 1 stitch there. I'm going to take you round here, and we're going to whiz round the corner here, and then I'm going to stop and switch over to the other blanket stitch so you can see how that works. But I want to see how, or show you how I manage a whole curve and then a really tight curve here. So make your life easier and start on a nice easy big curve, a straight as much as you can get it, and a nice easy curve to get into the swing of it. Now, where were we? Have we done 1 stitch? Were you counting? Because I've forgotten now, so we'll have to see. So that's, I think that was stitch 2, stitch 3. Can you see how this is really coming down in a tight curve? So I really want to position my needle, position my fabric and my applique so that the little bit in front of me there is just 1 stitch worth, can't say that, 1 stitch worth of straight applique in front of my needle, and I'm going to do 1 stitch. Okay, I think, was that 4? Were you counting? Shall we see? You should do a side stitch. Look at that. And then let's get it in position. So 1, lift and turn, 2, lift and turn, 3. Let's get it into position for its side stitch, and then lift. I think we do 2 stitches there. Let's turn it around for its side stitch, and we've got a really tight little corner here. So 1 stitch, I think I can get 1 more in there, and then I need to turn it round to come down this line, this straight bit here. So let's do 1 stitch and get it into position, and then straighten it up for its side swing, side stitch, and then we've got a nice straight bit here, so I'm going to shoot down there. That's nice and easy. 3, 4, side stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, side stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, side stitch, 1. Now we're coming around the other way in a really tight curve, so it's one of these curves here which is really steep and really tight. We treat it in exactly the same way, very slowly and carefully. So I've done 1 stitch. Let's reposition it to do another stitch, reposition it, another stitch, and another stitch. Get it into position for its side swing, slide, swing, and then we need to do another little bit there. Now, can you see why? So this is steep, so I'm really going to have to turn it. I kind of need half a stitch. That's a bit better. Turn it all the way round. Yeah, you know, I said we need those little mini stitches in between the teeth. I want that quite small, and I could make it smaller if I want. This is why, because when you're going around these really tight corners, you want that little bit in the middle to be as small as you can, so you can do little micro stitches coming around these little bits. And I suspect actually if I adjust that down, I've just put it down to 1 mil. For the life of me though, I can't remember what number we're on. Oh, there we go, there's the side one. 1, 2, let's come around here, 3, 4, and we're going to do a side stitch. And then as we're going to come up, I'm going to put that back up. 1, turn it round, 2, 3, 4, side stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, side stitch. And I'm going to finish this particular version here because I want to show you the other blanket stitch. So let me just take that off and show you. Oops. So you can see here, as I have reduced my stitch length, going around that really tight little corner has made a real difference to that. My 1.8 mil has been fine coming around here, and then I reduced that stitch length down to 1 to come around that really tight corner, and as I came around I increased my stitch length to come back up the other side. Okay, so that is that one. So what about the other stitch then? So on the standard blanket stitch here, so we've got the solid line going across instead of the dots. This is the settings it defaults to. So it's a 3.5 stitch width on the teeth. So we like that, we know that works. And we've got a 2.5 on the stitch length. So let's run that on our test piece of fabric and see how that turns out. Okay, so you can see already how it does the stitch is different. Can you see it goes forwards, back, forwards, side, side, forwards, back, forwards, side, side, forward, back, forward, side, side. Just re-angle that camera a little bit so you can see. Okay, right, let's have a look at how far apart it is because it's quite close. Let's do side, side. So can you see we've got some pretty close together blanket stitches, which may be fine, but you may want to change that. Now, I think that 3.5 on the teeth is perfect, but what if I wanted to increase the distance between the teeth? Now we know from the previous version, if you watch that going around those tight little corners, we might want to have that distance. So remember that that's a 2.5 mil stitch length or whatever it is on your machine. I'm going to increase that stitch length to, what should I do? I'm going to put 3.5 mil. So let me just show you what the machine is set at. Okay, so I've increased my stitch length to 3.5 mils to get it to focus to see what that looks like. Let's put that underneath the machine. Got orange thread everywhere and run it down the same. And again, what I want you to do is practice exactly like we did on the other one. So it's done a side stitch. And it's still doing its forwards, back, forwards, side, stitch, forwards, back, forwards, side, stitch, forwards, back, forwards, side, stitch. You can see why this is really good for your mental health, can't you? It's very good for your brain. In fact, I say they, I don't know who the they is, but somebody somewhere did some research on the sound of the a sewing machine on a human brain, and it is actually really meditative, which I can't pronounce for love nor money, but it's really good for your brain. That sound, that rhythmic sound is really good for our brain. So we know sewing is very good for us. Can you see the difference between those two? That is our original 2.5 mil distance on the stitch length, and that is now 3.5 mil, and we can see it's a bit bigger, a bit more spaced out. And it's really what I want you to do is experiment. And I know I've said this before on this video, it's really important that you experiment and find out which of those stitches works best for you, what looks best with your applique. There is no right answer. You might want the tighter ones going around like really tight areas, and you might want to open it up on big stretches. All right, so having established, I'm going to stick to that 3.5 and 3.5 for now, and I'm going to put that back on my machine, put my applique back on the machine, and let's find another nice stretchy bit, another nice curve, and see what happens here. And we're going to treat this in the same way. We're going to get the edge of our applique just to the right of the middle of our presser foot. I'm going to lower my needle down to the edge of my fabric, so I want exactly the same. I want my needle just to the right hand side of our applique piece, just on our background fabric. So when I'm happy that I'm in the position, I'm dropping my needle and I'm going to start the stitching. And now we have a different set of counting to do, because we already know that stitch is treated a little bit different. So let's go. Okay, so can you see there it went backwards first, and I wasn't quite ready for that, which is why you really want to start on a straight area, because if it does go back, it doesn't really matter. So it's done its swing to the left and back again, and now it's going to go forwards, it's going to go back, and it's going to go forwards and a side stitch. Forwards, back, forwards, side stitch. Forwards, back, forwards, side stitch. Forwards, back, forwards, side stitch. I'm going to stop there because we're starting to get a little bit of a turn or a curve on here. So I'm going to make a little micro adjustment just like we did on the other version. And I'm going to go forwards, back, forwards, side stitch. This time we can't stop in the middle of that middle section between the teeth. We have to let it do its whole stitch, the forwards, back, forwards, side stitch. We could potentially stop on the side stitch. I'm not trying to overcomplicate this. We can stop at any point, but as we're going around a curve, we have to let it do its whole of that middle stitch. All right, so let's just adjust it here. Forward, back, forward. So I'm stopping there because I want to make sure that my side stitch is at a nice right angle. This is what I mean. You can stop at the end of that little middle section between your teeth. Then you can readjust your applique so the side stitch goes off at right angles. So side stitch, I'm stopping there because now I need to check where the edge of my applique is, and go forward, back, forwards, forwards, back, forwards. Now because we've got a tight curve, I want to lift my presser foot, turn it so that my side tooth, as it were, goes off at a right angle. And now I want to make another little micro adjustment because I've got a tight curve. And this is where I'm going to drop that stitch size down to 2.5. You remember it defaulted to 2.5 because I've got a nice little tight corner here. Forwards. And let's get it. My side swing is going to be at right angles. Okay, let's get it in position for its forwards, back, forwards. I do not want to do a side stitch at this angle because we're not at right angle. So let's do a little adjustment so I can see it's at right angles. Okay, now let's get it into position. 1, 2, 3, side stitch. And then 1, 2, 3, get it into position for a side stitch. And I'm going to put that, where did we have it? We put it at 3.5, didn't we? As this is opening out a little bit, I can increase that stitch length again. 1, 2, 3. Get it into position. So right angle for the side stitch, and then back, forwards, side stitch. I think that was a bit off, but hey. Get it into position, forwards, back, forwards, stop, reposition, side stitch, forward, back, forward, side stitch. That was way out. If you do go way out, don't worry about it. You know, the odd little wonky one, honestly, the world will not stop spinning because you've got a wonky stitch. I promise it won't. Everything will still be as mad as it is when you started. It is just fabric and thread. Okay, oh, we've got a nice straight bit here. This is nice and easy. I'm loving this little bit. Forwards, back, forwards, side, stitch, forwards, back, forwards, side, stitch, forwards, back, forwards. I've got a curve. I need to level it up so my side stitch is at a right angle. And then forwards, back, forwards, get it repositioned for its side angle. And then off we go again. Forwards, let's get it positioned. I'm going to take this out in just a sec. I'm just going to come around here and then I'm going to show you what the two look like side by side. When we have got these two side by side, so this is our quilting version with a little stitches in the middle of each of our teeth, and this is our standard version. You can see the standard version looks a lot denser and this one looks a lot more open or a lot freer. So you don't have to choose that one over that one, but you can see how they give different looks. Now, if your machine only does that one, then that's what you're going with and it will look great. If you've got the choice, you can then have the choice between the two stitches, whether you want a more open look or a more dense look, depending on the look and the feel you are going for. Again, there's no particular right answer. What I would say is, as you can see, if you've got the choice and you have a complicated design with lots of twists and turns, shall I take a breath there, then using the quilting version of your blanket stitch is definitely going to be the easier one for you to go around those tight little curves, but we can still manage pretty much the same with our standard blanket stitch there. So I do hope that has helped, giving you a bit of confidence in tackling the edges of your applique with a very pretty blanket stitch. It does take a little bit of practice, but I know that you will be fine. If it has helped, please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell. And I will love you and leave you for now, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.